Okay, so here we are going to be doing some modeling in Fusion 360. So the first thing we want to do once we come in here is we need to set up a project. So you want to go up here to this little 9 little squares up here. Okay, it's the data panel, and click on that and it'll open this data panel. And then we want to start off by a project, creating a project. Okay, so if you click new project, it'll create a project, and we'll just call this for the class digital publishing. Okay. All right, so once it makes that, then just double click on that and you can go into here. Okay, so this will be our project, and then we may make several things in our class. Okay, so we'll make a new folder for what we're going to do today, and we're just going to do a test bottle. So we'll go into that and then double click, and we're inside of that folder. All right, then we want to save this file right off the bat, so just click save, and you'll see it says it's going to be in the digital publishing test bottle, and we'll just call this new bottle. You can call it whatever you want, but so there we go, and you'll see that it saves it in there. All right, now the way this software works is shift center mouse button will allow you to tumble around. So that's the hold down the shift and then hold down the center mouse button. If you let up on the shift and you just hold down the center mouse button, then this will move the viewport. All right. This is like an outliner. This is where all of our, as we create things, they're going to show up in here. So one of the first things we want to do is it's made a base layer for us, and we're creating in layers, and we really want a layer for pretty much everything we create, so they're all isolated on different layers. So to do that, you're going to click this button right here, which is called a new component. Okay, another way is to right click right here, a new component. That's another way. So it's either here or it's this little icon, either one, new component. This is going to come up, and then it's going to be, we're going to give it a name here. We're going to say this is the glass bottle. And you can you can activate it, but I'm going to tell you to not activate it just so that I can show you something. Okay, so we're not going to activate it. We're going to go click OK. So this is going to make me a new layer in here. Okay. Now, right now, if you go to this one, you'll see this little dot right here. That means this layer is active, and if I start making something, it's going to be on that layer. We want to make it on this layer, so we activate it here, and now whatever I make is going on this layer. So we want to make layers just like you would in Photoshop so we can keep organized. All right, so this is where we're going to start. Now, down here at the bottom is a timeline. Okay. And what the way this software works is it remembers everything we do in a timeline and allows us to go back in time and to change things. Okay, and you'll see that everything we create will start coming in a timeline down here. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to create a little drawing, and then we're going to build a three-dimensional bottle from a drawing. And what we're going to do is draw the bottom of the bottle first. So when I click this button right here, create sketch, it's going to ask me, okay, but where do you want to create the sketch? On this plane, which is the right side, on this plane, which is the front, or this is the ground? Okay, we want to create it on the ground, so we click on this, and then what it's doing is rotating the ground up so we're looking down on our object. All right, so now I have my tools may be a little bit different than yours up here, just simply because you can tell it to put new tools up here. I can tell what tools I want. So in our sketch tool, okay, so when we're in this sketch tool, and I'm going to turn it off and then come back into it. I don't know why I did that. Okay. So now these are my sketch tools. So I want to create a rectangle. Now if you click create, the tools are inside here. I'm creating a 2-point rectangle. So this is the same button here. And then it's going to snap to our grid, and this is our center. So what we're trying to do is to draw so that we have half a, that we're centered whatever we're drawing. Okay, so I'm going to click right here, which is 1, 2, 3 major lines up. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 major lines down, and then I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to click that, and that will center that. Now you can always move these after the fact, okay, but that's what we're doing here. Okay, now you right click and click OK, and then that gets you out of that function. If I wanted to adjust this, I could click on this, and then I could just drag it and move it. Control Z to undo it. I could do the same here, drag these, Control Z to undo it. And I can delete these too. If I pick this edge, then I can delete it. Okay, I'm going to undo that, Control Z. Alright, so this is going to be the base of our bottle, and I want the bottle to be more rounded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to create, and I'm going to do what's called a 3-point arc. This allows me to put a point on one end, a point on the other end, and then the third point will arc it. So I'm going to click here. That's the first point, and then down here is the second point, and now I can make a curve. I don't want it really fat like this. I just want a little bit of curve in it. So I'm going to click, actually I think what I want to do is click here, here, and then keep it on the center edge so that we know it's symmetrical like that. And then I can go ahead and do the same on the other side. And then I can right click OK to stop, and now I don't need this middle piece here. I can delete that and delete this one, and then that's going to make it so that our bottle bows a little bit. We're looking down on the bottle. Now I want these ends to be rounded. Okay, so we have a fillet tool right here. It's also under here, fillet, and then when I click, it's going to fillet that. Now I can adjust how much I want it to fillet. And if I go ahead while I've got it active, click the other pieces, the other ends, it'll all make them exactly the same size. And as I adjust it to just one, it'll adjust all of them. And then right click and click OK. And now I've got a nice kind of base. All right. Now this has got what's called constraints on it. So you'll see all these little symbols coming up. These are constraints. Okay. And right now they're good for us because it's just telling it, because we're trying to make something that can be manufactured, whether it's like if you're modeling something in Blender or 3ds Max or Maya, it may be you're making something that can't be manufactured, then this can be manufactured. Okay, so once I have this done, all right, then I can click finish sketch here or finish sketch here, and that'll get me out of sketch mode. So I'm just going to click here, and now I'm out of the sketch mode. I can always go back into that same sketch mode by either right clicking right here. Okay, I can go here and I can adjust it, or I can go down here and adjust it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to click our home button up here, and it's going to rotate it back up. And now what we're going to do is make it into a three-dimensional object. So by clicking on it, so it turns blue like this, we're going to right click and go press pull, and then I can pull this up. And I've got my inspector on, turn that off. Okay. So I'm not going to give you specifics, how the size of it. I just want something that's kind of tall and skinny like that. Okay. So you don't have to copy my numbers, just, aesthetic. It's a piece of art. And we like that. We'll click OK. Now what it's done is made a layer in here called body. And this is going to be my glass body. And I'm going to rename this sketch. This is my base sketch. So we kind of want to name our things as we go along. Okay, so we still have this layer active. So now what I want to do is I'm going to cut this from the side to make it into a little bit more of a bottle shape. So we're going to make a new sketch, and we're going to tell it to be on this plane. Center mouse button to pull it down. And now what I'm going to do is draw a curve across here. Now I'm going to take this one right here, which is a fit point spline. You can go here, okay, and under splines, fit point is what we want. And this can all be adjusted after I draw it, so don't worry if you don't get it in the right place. I just want it to be out here somewhere, so just click, then click in here somewhere, and then have it cross out like so, and then right click to stop, or you can also click this check and that'll make it stop. Then click in the background, right click, OK. Now I can click in the background. Now if I want to adjust this, I can grab these points and move them around. Okay, why is it giving me a hard time? And I can move these around however I want. I don't want this dipping down right here. I want it to kind of go straight in, so I'm going to pull this up a little bit. This is going to be our spout. Okay, so don't get it, don't do something like this. This is where our liquid's going to be poured out of right here. So something like this, that's okay. All right, and then I want to cut a little bit of the bottom out here. So for it, I'm going to do a 3-point arc like we were using before. And I'm going to put a point on this side and a point on that side. And then I'm going to pull it up a little bit like so. And that looks good. And then I'm going to click OK. Then I will finish the sketch. Click on my home button. All right, now what we're going to do now is we're going to use these lines as cutting tools to project through this to cut this. To do that, we're going to use this button right here, split body. Okay, it's right here, split body. Then the first thing it's going to ask you is pick the body itself. Okay, oops, I picked split face. I want split body. Okay, so pick the body. And then now you're going to select the splitting tools. So I can select this spline and it's going to cut through it. And I can select this one at the same time, so it cuts both of those at the same time. And then I just click OK. And then it's going to we're going to have some other parts in here. So now you'll see that each one of these pieces and this bottom one is the one we want to keep. So I can go ahead and delete these other pieces. We don't need those anymore. But there is a thing that if you right click on this and you click delete, it's going to give you an error message. Okay, and what it's telling you is that this piece is associated to the center piece, and if I delete it, it's going to affect the other piece. Okay, so we really don't want to delete it. What we want to do is right click, and what we want to do is what's called a remove, and then it takes it out of there. And it doesn't affect the other pieces. So we'll remove both of those. Okay, so we got a nice little shape there. Now I want these to be a little more rounded. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click fillet. It's going to select all the way around that. I'm going to spin around where I can see this little arrow, and I'm going to pull in on it to get it to do a fillet around there. I can always come in here and actually type it in. So I think I'm just going to keep this a nice round number. Let's try 8. Yeah, that's looks nice, smooth to that. So I just hit enter, and then it's going to smooth that. Okay, we want to do that same down here. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go. By the way, if you're going to repeat the same thing you were doing, which was a fillet, I can right click and go repeat fillet, and it takes me right back in. And then I can pull that, and I'm going to go for, I think on this one we'll go a little bit smaller, maybe a 7. Now I can turn this grid off. Down here are your viewport tools, so I can go right here and say, okay, turn the grid off. Now you'll see that I curved one side, but I didn't do the other. Okay, the reason I did that is I want to show you how to edit something. So I can click on it, that fillet. I can right click and I can go edit the feature. I can do it that way. I can also come down here on my timeline, and this is that fillet. I can right click and I can edit it. So either way you can do that. Now what you'll notice is if I hold down the control key now, it's going to take it on and off, because this is going to allow me to add to this selection. So by holding the control key down, I can click this side, and now when I let go of the control key, it'll round that up for us. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I think I want these feet to be a little bit round. You never want something razor sharp, because in society, when we're manufacturing, we don't do that, because then it's like a razor blade to cut somebody. But instead of filleting the edge, I'm going to fillet the piece here. So if I click on this and I go up here and I click fillet, and then I start giving it a number, it's doing the whole thing around it. Okay. And let's go for, say, maybe 3.3 maybe. Okay, and then if I hold the control key, I can pick this one over here too. Now let up on the control, and it's going to do it on that side too. So that's going to give us a nice kind of a really rounded bottom to it, but it'll still stay flat, so it'll sit up correctly. And then click OK. Now I want to put a handle on this as well. We're going to put a little handle over here. So we're going to go create a new drawing, and we're going to go from this side. And what I'm going to do is, let's do a fit point spline. Let's start with it clipping into our object, and then maybe click here, then another one maybe here, and then another one down here like this. Right click, OK. And now I can adjust this however I want this handle to kind of look. So I may go with something about like that. That looks pretty good. And now I'm going to give this thickness. So you're going to go to this offset button right here, click on it, and then I can pull this and say how thick I want the handle, and maybe something about like that would work pretty well. Okay, that's an offset. Click OK. Now, in order for me to make this into a three-dimensional handle, it has to be a closed spline, so you can't have these openings here. So we'll just go a straight line, which is this one, and we'll click from here to there. Right click, OK. Right click, repeat, and then draw one here to there, and you'll see it turn blue. That means it's a solid shape. And now I can do a press pull on this. Okay, when I do the press pull, I want to kind of pull around. Now, I can pull it one way, okay, but another thing you can do is on these, they'll give you options on these tools. I can say make it symmetrical, so as I pull it one way, it'll pull it the other way too. So I'm going to pull it a little bit. I don't want to get too fat. Now, what it's doing right now is using this as a cutting tool, and it's cutting a hole in it, okay. So our operations are cut. We can join it together, or we can make it as a new body. So we have different options here. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to join it together. And then I click OK, and then it's going to join that. Okay, so I want to round this also. So I'm going to pick this edge, and I'm going to say, let's fillet that. And maybe something about like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and hold down the control key, and I'm going to pick these other edges. So you just, the control allows you to add to it, and it'll round that for us. And I think I want it a little bit smaller than that. Let's go for maybe 5. Yeah, I like that. I want it to be kind of square with some rounded corners. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to click OK. Now the other thing is I know is any time right now if I didn't like this shape, all I have to do is go back to this spline, right click and edit the selection, and then I can come in here and I can edit this. Now when I pull this, it's going to pull both sides because this is the constraint saying keep it a consistent thickness. I can delete the constraint, I can adjust this and change this, but right now I think that's fine. And I'm going to go for that, and then I'll finish the sketch and it updates back through it. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now there never will be a joint like this. This will, it's either plastic or glass, so this will mold in. So we want to put a fillet on that as well. You'll see it selects the whole thing. Then I'm going to pull it in a little bit and then just decide, and let's try 4. That looks pretty good. And then let's go ahead and add the bottom to it. So I'm holding the control key and then add the bottom and let go. That all looks quite lovely, and click OK. And now that's kind of got a nice soft transition. Now if you want, you can also look at this without those little wireframes. If you go down here, this is your display settings, and you pull up the visual style. If I go shaded, then it's just going to show it to me without the black lines on it. Okay, I'm going to go turn the black lines back on. All right, now what I want to do is to make the bottle hollow. So what we want to do is what's called a shell, okay, which I use it all the time, so I'll have it out here. Yours might not be out here. You can go right here. Then you click this, and then how far you pull in on this is how much it's going to shell it. Now sometimes you may get into a situation where it's going to give you an error message. Let's see. It's like this, okay? And what it's telling me is this is too thick. It can't manufacture it that thick. So I'm going to go back down to 2. Now, one of the reasons that it gives you where it can't make it as thick as you want is because this shell type is on a sharp shell, and since all this is really rounded, what we really want is a rounded shell. So we want to use this, not this one. It defaults to this one. And now I can make this a little bit thicker if I wanted to. And actually I want it a little bit thicker. 4 is probably too much. Let's go for, say, 3. Let me look at that. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go for that and click OK. Now what that did was it made it so that it's hollow in here. So it just hollowed it out, which is nice. Now another thing that we want is we never want just a sharp edge, because we don't manufacture that. You can manufacture, I can make this out of plastic and manufacture it this way, and this edge will be so sharp that you could cut your fingers on it. So we never really manufacture things that are completely sharp. So what we want to do is to fillet the edge. But what I'm going to do is get in closer, and I'm going to pick the object itself, and then I'm going to go modify fillet, and I can fill that whole thing at one time. I don't want it too thick. Something like that's pretty nice. Okay. So I'm going to round my number here, and that'll make a nice kind of soft edge for us there. Okay, now would be a good time to save. So what happens here is you'll see this says V1 over here. So if I hit save and I don't type anything in, okay, if I type something in, it'll make it a new file, but I just want to leave this, and I just click OK, and then it's going to save it, and it's going to save it in versions. And so at any given time, I can go back in time and open up different versions of the bottle. Okay, this looks pretty good. There you go. So the software is pretty easy to use. Here's your timeline, which has all of our pieces on it where we can go back at any time and re-edit it. So let's go do a render of this. Okay, so right here where this says design, we're going to click where it says render, and now this is putting us over into our render window. And I can shift center mouse button. I can rotate around however I want to look at this. I want to see in the top just a little bit, so I'm going to go with something like this. Now by default it's giving us a 16:9 render, which means it's like the proportions of a computer screen, and that's fine. And so all we have to do to start rendering it is hit this in-canvas render. Now, the in-canvas render is just going to render it on our screen. It's kind of what we do for tests. Later, when we want to render out a really high-end one, we'll click this render button, and then we'll tell it to set up a higher quality render. But for right now, this is checking purposes. We just click the screen button right here, and it's going to automatically start rendering this. Now down here in the bottom right corner, this is a quality setting. So this is what's called a progressive render. So it starts rendering, and the longer you let it render, the higher the quality is. So it gets better, 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 better. It defaults to excellent right here, which is fine for what we're doing, but at a certain time, once we've really got our project and we've got it really looks good, and we've got our branding and our logo and everything, then we'll kick it up here to infinity, and then it'll render a really, really, really nice one. But for right now, we'll just keep it down in here. And now, once I frame this in, I want to turn this into a camera so I can come back to this later. So right here where this says named views, if you open this up and I right click on this, I can say a new named view, and then I'm just going to call this camera, and we'll say this is camera 1. And I may decide later I want to do a render maybe of the other side, maybe looking a little more down on it, maybe something like this. So I can make another camera, and we'll call this one camera 2. So what this allows us to do now is I can just click on this and then it'll go to camera 1, or I can click on this and it'll go to camera 2. Now, by default, it has lighting in here, and so you can see there's light coming from over here, and we got a shadow in here. Now, we can control all of that. So if we click right here, this is our scene settings, and this comes up. Now, by default, it's making the background a solid color, and we can adjust it here. Probably always want to keep it a gray. We don't want to get like, really funky colors or something in here. Okay, we want them neutral because we want to keep people looking at our object. And then if we go to environment right here, then this is what it's using to light it. Now, right now it's using, these are HDRI files, and an HDRI file is a panoramic file, so it's a dome, and it stores lighting information in it. Okay, now they're using Plaza right here by default. That's okay, but it's going to cause us some problems when we start putting glass on this. So I would say let's start with something like this sharp highlights and drag and drop this on here, and it'll change the lighting. Now I can change the direction of the lighting. So once I pick this is what's lighting it. I can go back to settings here. I can kick up how bright the light is here. And then if I click this rotation, click this button, this little window will pop up. It can be moved around by clicking here. And this is rotating the dome. So you can see I can place the shadow in a different place and the light in a different place by just rotating this. And it's just rotating a dome around it. Okay, to turn that off, you just click here and it'll turn that back off. Okay, so right now our lighting is looking okay. Let's go play with putting some materials on this. So I'm going to hit close right here. And this, where this little color wheel here called appearance, this is our materials. Okay. And so there are all kinds of materials in here. We can go with a plastic, start with a plastic. And let's go with this polyamide. Just drag it, drop it on it. And then it'll drop it up here. By the way, we can drag it and put it on an object, or we can put it on faces on specific things. Now these are translucent plastics, so they kind of, the light is penetrating through it. So it's kind of a waxy looking plastic. But you can see it's rendering and it's looking pretty nice. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second as it renders it. Okay, so it's rendered a little bit more. Now what you can do is you can name this stuff and you can adjust it. So if I double click on this, I can name it right here. So this is going to be Oodie Yellow Plastic Bottle. Only if I can spell. Okay, and of course, anytime I make changes, it's going to start re-rendering it. Okay, and then I could decide to make it so you have a roughness here, and that's how rough the plastic is. And you'll see it's set up a little bit here, almost it's like a 0.265, so it's not too shiny. Okay, if I turn this down, then it's going to make the plastic much more glossy looking. So when we're making things, we're determining how glossy or how matte it is. So that you'll see it's now turning into much more glossy. If I turn this way up, then it's going to be much more dull plastic, less shiny. So we have controls over that when we're making our materials. We have to just decide what we want. So I'm going to make it back. So it's maybe 3. And this is translucency depth. So this is allowing the light to penetrate through it. So it's kind of like a wax. So we can control that. We can control how reflective it is. We can control the color. I could come in here and say, oh, well, I actually want to make this more of a kind of a blue color like that. Kind of like that. And I'm just going to click done. And we'll let that render for a minute. Okay, so you can see, nice piece. Let's see about putting some something see-through on it, like some glass. So let's go in here, glass, and they have some different kinds of glass. Let's just use these glossy ones. Let's do like this heavy blue. Okay, and let's drag that over here. And now you'll see we're getting a nice kind of glass piece. Now on the glass, if we go in here, and let's just call this is Oodie Blue Dense Glass. So I want this glass to be a little more dense, okay, and it's, you know, it's pretty translucent. So this is your absorbent distance. So as you lower this number, the more that you kick it up higher, so if I make this self higher, then it's going to be less color in it, that the light is just passing through the glass and you're barely seeing as much color. As you bring this down, so let's go to maybe 5, then you're going to see it's like a more dense color into it. Let's go to maybe 3. We'll let that go. This is a refractive index, okay, and you have different ones that you can go here. It's a number that really calculates how dense the light is in penetrating through something, okay. And roughness is how shiny, like I said, we'll just leave this shiny right now. And then I'll say done. And I'm going to let this run, and I'm going to pause it while this runs. Okay, so there it is. Nice, pretty render. Now, you're going to want to save this render so that you can put up onto the Brightspace, and that'll be for your homework due for next week. So to save it while it's still rendering, okay, don't stop the render, let it stay render, and then click this button right here, which is capture image. Okay, then this is going to come up. Just leave all the settings the way it is. Click OK, and then you're going to tell it where you want to save it down here. Okay, so save it to your computer. Okay, give it a name, what you want to call it. So this is my blue glass test bottle. Okay, I'll save that. And then hit save, and that'll save it. Okay. Alright, and I've got Photoshop open here. And then I'll go ahead and open it. So we'll go here. And there we go. And there we go. That's my render. And that's what you're going to turn in. So this is just a little test bottle that we did just to get you kind of going with Fusion 360 and show you it's not too hard to use. A lot of people kind of get scared when they come to this class, like, oh my gosh, 3D, I got to make 3D stuff. Okay, it's not that hard to do. And so now we're going to kind of set this aside, and we're going to start working on our product and doing a logo for it and doing the other part before we get to actually building the bottle that you're going to design. Okay, hopefully that helped you guys, and just reach out to me if you have any problems. All right, thank you.